Well, chapter 8 deals with the quite fundamental question, what is the gospel? Now, some of you may be thinking, how could a book that has gospel in the subtitle wait 8 chapters to discuss such an important topic? And others may be thinking, well, the gospel's so basic, why on earth include a whole very long chapter on what is the gospel? Don't we all know what the gospel is? And it's one of those things, the word gospel, it's one of those things that is used so often, we assume what it means. And so I think it is really important to stop and say, okay, how does the New Testament use the word gospel? Because sometimes it can become like the word love. I love yogurt, right? And I love my wife. Are they the same word anymore, And sometimes people use the word gospel to mean a whole range of different things. It can just mean, my favorite idea or my favorite person. We say, that person there, he's a gospel man. And all we mean is, I like him, he's one of us. We don't actually mean it's got anything to do with necessarily with the content of the particular thing the New Testament calls the gospel. So in this chapter, I'm trying to explore really what the New Testament says the gospel is. And it starts with a little bit of history. We look at how the word gospel, euangelion, is used in Greek literature of the time, and it's always used for announcements of important news, really important news. Sometimes bad news, very often good news. So if an emperor has a victory in a faraway land, someone is sent back to the town to announce what is called a gospel of the victory. And sometimes you see a parody of this. There's one Greek passage that announces an all-time low price in the market of anchovies as a gospel, which I just think is really quite funny. But the point is, it's always the announcement of some news, something that's new. Now in the Old Testament, especially in the book of Isaiah, this word gospel, but in its Hebrew form, basar, is used over and over for a grand announcement about what God is doing in the world to establish His kingdom. So you see this particularly in Isaiah 40, Isaiah 52, Isaiah 61. The technical details are in the chapter. But the point is, it's the announcement of God coming and reigning as King. Now, as soon as you spot that, when you hear Jesus in the Gospels talking about the gospel of the kingdom, aha! What we have here is a word that Greeks would have understood and Jews would have understood. It's an announcement of some great big news, and it's to do with the kingship, not of the emperor, but of God Himself, establishing His kingdom over the world. So that's the fundamental. The gospel is about God establishing His kingdom. And one of the really important things I'm trying to say in this chapter is that the gospel has to do with the story of Jesus as the way we are to understand the kingdom being established over the world. The actual news of Jesus' birth, life, teaching, healings, saving death, glorious resurrection, and His return for judgment are what the New Testament mean by the term gospel. It refers to the announcement of the Jesus story as the way we understand that the kingdom has come and opened the door to sinners. They can now become members of this new kingdom. They can come under the kingship of God because of what Jesus has done in the cross and the resurrection. And you find this in the book of Acts. The gospel summaries and gospel sermons throughout Acts narrate the story of Jesus. You find this when Paul stops to actually unpack what his gospel is. He doesn't do that too often, actually. He uses the gospel word heaps, but he stops to tell you the gospel content only a few times, and when he does, it's to do with the story of Jesus and the way that Jesus has opened up the kingdom to sinners so that they can know the mercy of God. So I'm really trying to challenge us all to think of the gospel not in abstract terms as just having to do with a particular idea of the atonement or a particular idea of sin, all of which I think are important, but you've got to locate these theological ideas in the actual events of Jesus' life. So when someone simply tells the story of Jesus without the theological import of the story, I don't think that's gospel. But here's the thing, I don't think you're telling the gospel when you simply extract theological themes without telling the story of Jesus. The story of Jesus as the embodiment of these theological themes is what the gospel is.